So in 1939, it rained snow over a field of poppies to save a girl in a blue gingham dress.
Oh, yeah. Such an iconic moment.
Right. Like, if you've ever watched this on a Sunday afternoon, you know it is just one of the most magical, visually stunning scenes in cinematic history.
Absolutely, it really is.
But what you might not know is that it was also pure, unadulterated, industrial-grade asbestos falling directly onto a teenager's face.
Yeah, it's a jarring image, isn't it?
Completely wild.
I mean, to take something so universally beloved, something that defines, childhood innocence for millions of people, and realize it was actually a massive environmental hazard.
Jarring is honestly the perfect word for it. And, you handed over a fascinating stack of sources about the making of The Wizard of Oz, and I just want to welcome you to today's deep dive.
It's a great topic to dig into.
Your curiosity is definitely justified here, because our mission today is to, well, look behind the curtain of this Technicolor dreamland. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right, let's do it.
We are going to entirely dismantle the Hollywood myth of the cursed movie set. The stories, people always say the production was haunted or, uniquely unlucky.
Oh, constantly.
But those eerie stories weren't supernatural at all. We're looking at a chilling reality of absolute systemic negligence.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, you often see this curse narrative heavily applied in Hollywood, especially to build mystique,
Right, like a marketing tactic.
Exactly. You hear about strange, spooky things happening on the sets of Poltergeist or The Exorcist. And the studio marketing leans right into it because it makes the movie feel dangerous.
People love a ghost story.
They do. But applying that same supernatural label to a family-friendly technological marvel like The Wizard of Oz, it does something far more insidious.
How so?
It actively masks the very real human cost of early Hollywood filmmaking. It gives a free pass to studio executives by blaming ghosts instead of, holding a mirror up to their own gross negligence.
Yeah, it is so much easier to blame a phantom hex than a producer who just refuses to turn off a spotlight.
Exactly.
But before we get into the physical danger, like the fires, the poisoning, the asbestos, we really have to look at the environment that allowed those things to happen.
The whole culture of the set.
Right, because physical danger on a movie set doesn't just spontaneously generate out of nowhere. It is a symptom of structural failure. And the administrative chaos on this production was a massive flashing warning sign.
Oh, the sheer volume of changes required before a single frame was even locked in, it should have been an omen.
Yeah.
The foundation was essentially built on sand. I mean, between January and October of 1938, the studio hired at least 10 different screenwriters to work on the script.
Wait, 10?
10.
Which tells me there was zero unifying vision. If you have 10 different writers, you don't really have a story, you have an assembly line.
Precisely. Some drafts were entirely rejected. Others were just chopped up with tiny fragments surviving into the final product.
Just a mess.
It's a total mess.
Yeah.
And that lack of a clear vision bled immediately into the casting process, which was basically a revolving door. MGM didn't even want Judy Garland originally.
Really?
No, they desperately wanted Shirley Temple to star as Dorothy, but they couldn't negotiate a loan from her contract studio.
Wow.
So Garland was their backup plan, which, as we'll see, set a profoundly dark tone for how she was treated later.
And the musical chairs didn't stop with Dorothy, right? The wizard himself went through a whole lineup.
Oh, yeah.
The sources say at least 3 other actors were seriously considered before Frank Morgan got it, mostly because the others just walked away over salary and contract disputes.
Right.
Even the Wicked Witch wasn't settled. Gail Sondergaard was supposed to play the role, but the script kept drastically altering how the witch was presented.
So she just left.
She just walked away.
Yeah.
Margaret Hamilton stepping into the role was literally the result of administrative fallout.
And if the script and the cast were a revolving door, the director's chair was practically spinning off its axis. Richard Thorpe was the original director, but producer Mervyn LeRoy fired him quite early on for allegedly rushing the footage.
Okay, so they bring in someone else.
Yeah, they bring in George Cukor. Cukor takes one look at the production, demands major reshoots, completely changes the visual design of Dorothy and the Wicked Witch, and then he just leaves.
Just bails?
He was pulled away to direct Gone with the Wind before any new filming under his direction even started.
It's just wild to me. The studio pulls the captain off the ship right as it's leaving the harbor. So then they bring in director number 3, Victor Fleming.
Right, and Fleming comes in, actually manages to shoot nearly all of the primary Oz-based scenes, and then, guess what? He also gets called away to work on Gone with the Wind.
You cannot make this up.
So for the final several days of filming, mostly those sepia-toned Kansas scenes, They hand the reins over to King Vidor. That is 4 directors for one single movie.
So imagine trying to build a skyscraper, right? But every week, the bank swaps out your architect, your foreman, and the blueprints.
Total nightmare.
Yeah, and yet they still demand you finish the project ahead of schedule. That level of administrative chaos just guarantees safety is going to be the first thing to fall through the cracks.
Absolutely.
I mean, no one is looking out for the structural integrity of the building when everyone is just trying to adapt to the new boss.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. But, we have to take it a step further to really understand the 1930s studio system.
Okay.
The actors and crew weren't modern freelance artists. Under the contract system of that era, they were essentially the literal property of the studios.
Wow.
They
Yeah.
were treated more like livestock or factory equipment. That constant turnover at the top completely stripped away any cohesive leadership or duty of care.
Because nobody's really accountable.
Right. When there's no single person taking responsibility for the day-to-day well-being of the production, the environment becomes frantic. If a piece of equipment breaks, you just swap it out.
Well, if they were willing to treat their directors and lead actors like disposable commodities, it's really no surprise they treated the human body the exact same way.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the physical reality of the set. The frantic environment you just described, combined with the movie's greatest achievement, which was its visuals, created a literal structural oven.
An oven is a good way to put it.
The scene set in Oz took about 6 grueling months to film, with everyone working 15-hour days. But to capture those vibrant, revolutionary Technicolor shots, they needed an insane amount of light.
Yeah, this is where the technological ambition really clashes with human biology.
Right.
Early Technicolor film stock had an incredibly low ISO, meaning its light sensitivity was just extremely poor. To expose a single frame of that vibrant color, you had to blast the subject with a blinding amount of illumination.
Just a wall of light.
They crammed up to 150 industrial lamps onto the sound stages.
And the heat generated by 150 early industrial movie lights in an enclosed space pushed the temperature on set to over 100 degrees.
Consistently over 100 degrees. Cast and crew members were regularly passing out from the brutal heat.
That is insane.
And on top of that, people were suffering from vision problems, just from staring into the sheer intensity of those lights all day.
So you have a 100-degree blinding oven. But the environment itself was also literally toxic.
Oh, yeah.
The book The Making of the Wizard of Oz by Algene Harmitz reveals the materials they used for special effects and costumes were highly hazardous.
Very hazardous.
We already mentioned the asbestos snow raining down in the poppy field, but they also used a heavy-handed amount of asbestos in the costumes themselves just to achieve certain textures.
Right.
So what does this all mean? I'm trying to wrap my head around the risk assessment here. Did they genuinely not know the dangers of asbestos and extreme heat in the 1930s, or did they know and just not care?
What's fascinating here is how often technological advancement outpaces workplace safety. They likely knew there was some risk. I mean, industrial hazards were becoming more understood in the 1930s, but the studio's priority was entirely on the aesthetic output.
You're getting the show.
Exactly. They needed the colors to pop. If that required 150 lamps baking the room, they brought in the lamps.
Jeez.
If it required fake snow that wouldn't immediately melt under those 100-degree lights, they used asbestos because it was fireproof and looked great on camera. The human limits of the people standing in that room were entirely secondary.
Well, and while the environment was baking everyone evenly, the lead actors were being subjected to highly individualized chemical experiments applied directly to their skin.
The makeup.
The makeup on the set was a hazard zone all its own. Ray Bolger, who played the Scarecrow, wore a rubber mask that was so restrictive he couldn't even eat safely during those 15-hour days.
Unbelievable.
It was applied so tightly and worn for so long that it actually carved deep lines into his face. Those lines stayed etched into his skin for over a year after filming finally concluded.
And incredibly, Bolger's makeup was considered the safer option.
Right.
Margaret Hamilton's iconic green skin for the Wicked Witch was created using a copper-based makeup in highly dangerous concentrations. If it was accidentally ingested, it was toxic.
Wow.
But the absolute worst case, the most infamous casualty of this specific production practice, was the original Tin Man, Buddy Ebsen.
Yes, I want you listening to really picture this process. To get that reflective, metallic Tin Man look on camera in 1938, before modern synthetics existed, Ebsen's makeup consisted of a full face of clown white cream paint,
Okay.
which they then heavily coated with raw aluminum dust. They were just powdering raw airborne metal directly onto his face day after day.
And it didn't take long for his body to just shut down.
Yeah.
After only 10 days of filming, Ebsen couldn't breathe.
10 days.
Yeah, he had to be rushed to the hospital. The raw aluminum powder had been inhaled so deeply and so frequently that it fully coated his lungs.
That is terrifying.
He suffered from intense muscle cramping, excruciating pain, and he literally couldn't pull in oxygen.
It was nearly fatal. And the sources include this incredibly grim quote from Ebsen himself about the ordeal.
What did he say?
He said, "I wondered if I was dying. No one seemed to know what was wrong or what the outcome was going to be. Tests revealed that my lungs were coated with the aluminum dust with which they'd been powdering my face."
Horrifying.
He was stuck in the hospital for 2 solid weeks. And after that, he had to spend another entire month recovering in a hotel just to be able to breathe normally again.
The studio's response to nearly killing one of their lead actors is very telling. They don't pause production.
Of course not.
They don't launch a comprehensive safety review. A month-long delay was deemed financially unacceptable, so they just replace him.
Just swap him out.
Yep. They bring in Jack Haley to take over the role. And to explain Ebsen's sudden disappearance, the studio puts out a cover story that he just suffered an allergic reaction.
I really have to push back on the studio's allergic reaction narrative here.
Go for it.
They literally coated a man's respiratory system in raw metal dust, destroyed his lungs, blamed his own immune system for the failure, and then immediately slapped a wet version of the exact same metal onto the next guy.
It's unbelievable.
That's not an allergy. That is a crime scene.
The profound lack of empathy is staggering. To the studio executives, Ebsen wasn't a patient. He was a broken piece of equipment.
Right.
So they swapped him out. Now, they did tweak the makeup for Jack Haley. Instead of powdering the raw aluminum dust directly into the air around his face, they mixed the aluminum into a paste so it wouldn't be inhaled quite as easily.
But it's still raw metal.
Still a toxic substance.
Yeah.
Haley ended up developing a severe eye infection from that metallic paste that took him off the project for several days anyway.
And while the Tin Man was being poisoned slowly, breath by breath, the danger for the Wicked Witch was immediate and catastrophic.
Another fire.
Yeah. We talked about Margaret Hamilton's toxic copper makeup, but that wasn't even the worst thing that happened to her. In her very first appearance in Oz, the Wicked Witch is supposed to dramatically disappear in this massive cloud of fire and smoke.
The mechanism for that was a classic practical effect. She was supposed to drop down through a hidden trapdoor in the stage floor, and once she was safely below, a burst of fire and smoke would be triggered above her.
Great.
But during one of the takes, the timing was botched. The crew triggered the fire too early before Hamilton was safely below the stage.
Oh, no.
And the flames completely engulfed her.
She suffered second-degree burns across her face and third-degree burns on her hand. Third degree. That means the burn destroyed the entire thickness of her skin and damaged the underlying tissue.
Yet again, look at the studio's reaction. It wasn't horror at what they'd done. They immediately just wanted to know when she could come back to work.
What?
She did return 6 weeks later while her burns were still healing. She agreed to come back and not pursue legal action, but she drew a very firm line in the sand. She absolutely refused to do any more scenes involving fire.
Which is the most reasonable boundary anyone has ever set in the history of Hollywood.
Right.
But the studio still needed their explosive shots, so they bring in a stunt double, Betty Danko, to film the famous Surrender Dorothy skywriting scene. She's sitting on a prop broomstick that is essentially rigged to shoot smoking fireworks.
This raises an important question about a studio's fundamental accountability.
Exactly.
They almost burned their lead actress alive with a poorly timed pyrotechnic effect. You would think that incident would trigger a massive overhaul of their special effects department.
You would hope so.
Instead, they implemented zero new safety protocols. When Margaret Hamilton rightly refused to put her life in danger again, the studio simply found a stunt worker, someone with less power, less visibility, and fewer protections, and subjected her to the exact same lethal negligence.
It's disgusting.
On the third take of that stunt, the broomstick literally explodes.
Yeah.
Betty Janko is severely injured, rushed to the hospital, and left with permanent scars.
See, it wasn't a curse targeting the role of the witch. It was a corporation that fundamentally did not care if their actresses lived or died as long as they got the shot.
Exactly.
The sheer volume of bodily harm on this set is staggering. But as horrific as the fires, the metal poisoning, and the asbestos were the darkest part of this source material, the most devastating and long-lasting damage inflicted on this set was directed at the film's central star, a 16-year-old girl.
Judy Garland. Her experience on The Wizard of Oz is one of the great tragedies of cinema history.
It really is.
As we mentioned earlier, she wasn't their first choice, and the studio made sure she felt that insecurity. They heavily scrutinized this teenager's appearance to an obsessive, cruel degree.
What do they do?
They forced her to aggressively bind her breasts to look younger. They made her wear false teeth. They even used rubber discs inside her nose to alter its shape for the camera.
They were basically trying to manufacture a specific physical doll, and it didn't stop at external prosthetics. They dictated what went into her body.
Oh, absolutely.
Her diet was strictly restricted by the studio. She was limited to chicken soup, black coffee, and cigarettes. Try to imagine a 16-year-old girl working 15-hour days in a 100-degree room under a heavy costume, surviving on broth and nicotine.
Because no human body can sustain that kind of schedule on that diet, the body naturally wants to shut down.
Right.
So the studio turned to pharmacology. They actively provided her with stimulants, specifically amphetamines, to force her central nervous system to stay awake, keep her energized through the long days, and continually suppress her appetite to keep her weight down.
It's abuse.
But when her 15-hour shift was finally over, she was too chemically wired to sleep. So they gave her large doses of sleeping pills, barbiturates, to forcefully knock her out at night.
Uppos and downers.
They were completely hijacking her biology on a daily basis with an endless cycle.
And the physical toll of that abuse was highly visible on set. She was exhausted, she was running on amphetamines, and as a natural side effect of severe exhaustion and upper medication, she would sometimes fall into these uncontrollable fits of giggles.
Yeah.
And how did the adults in the room handle this overworked, drugged teenager? During one of these giggle fits, the director, Victor Fleming, walked right up and physically slapped her across the face.
It's abuse, plain and simple. And the profound tragedy is that the damage they did to her didn't stay contained to that soundstage.
Yeah.
It rewired her permanently. Tragically, just 30 years after The Wizard of Oz debuted, Judy Garland died. The cause of death was an overdose of the exact same type of barbiturates that the studio had intentionally addicted her to as a teenager.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and I mean that in the most heartbreaking sense possible. When you watch that movie, Dorothy is the ultimate embodiment of optimism.
She really is.
She is heartwarming, she's pure, she is searching for a place where troubles melt like lemon drops.
Yeah.
The dissonance between the radiant joy she brought to millions of people on screen and the cruel, soul-crushing nightmare she was being forced to endure off-camera is incredibly hard to reconcile.
The systemic abuse went even deeper than the chemical and the physical, too.
It did.
Yeah. The source notes that her third husband later claimed she was repeatedly molested by the actors playing the Munchkins. Now, that specific claim has been heavily contested by historians and other people on set.
Okay, so that's contested.
Right. However, what is not contested is Garland's own written account of her time at MGM. In her unpublished autobiography, she documented years of horrific sexual assault by MGM co-founder Louis B. Mayer himself.
Oh my God.
And she noted that this abuse began right around the time she was filming The Wizard of Oz.
The head of the studio, the man pulling all the strings, it paints such a bleak picture of the power dynamics at play.
It really does.
The commodification of the human body for this film spared absolutely no one, from the crew breathing asbestos to the teenager carrying the entire emotional weight of the picture.
It is a very heavy legacy to process.
To wrap this all up, for you listening to this deep dive right now, the core takeaway from the sources you provided is undeniable. The alleged curse of the Wizard of Oz is nothing but a ghost story.
Total fiction.
It is a convenient piece of Hollywood marketing designed to cover up a horrific reality. There were no ghosts haunting the Tin Man. There were no supernatural hexes on the Wicked Witch.
Just people.
It was just a group of people subjected to relentless abuse, suffocated by toxic substances, and endangered by a blatant criminal disregard for their safety. They didn't just capture a Technicolor masterpiece, they built it on literal blood, sweat, and tears.
That reality leaves us with a heavy burden as modern viewers. Now that you know the true human cost of this cinematic milestone, how do you watch it?
It's tough.
If a piece of art is universally beloved, if it brings genuine comfort and joy to millions of people generation after generation, but we know that it fundamentally broke the people who made it, At what point does the art stop justifying the suffering?
A great question.
Does continuing to celebrate this movie make us complicit in the abuses of the 1930s studio system? Or is it possible for us to separate the magic we see on the screen from the nightmare that happened off it? It's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
But it is definitely something for you to chew on the next time you hear Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
I think that is the perfect chilling note to end on. Thank you so much for bringing us this incredible, eye-opening source material. It completely changes how you look at a classic. We will see you on the next deep dive.